Dyana Forster. I am running for at-large Democratic council member, proud DC native, Ward 7 mom, and also mother of a Jackson Reed student who will be graduating, third generation from Wilson Jackson Reed. Yeah, so a little back about my background. I was first I was the political director for UFCW Local 400 labor union, represent grocery store workers, and I managed their political and legislation team and community affairs. So I've endorsed candidates for years in the district, Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia too, and I was also the president of the Metro Washington Labor Council, so I also led endorsements on that behalf of all of the unions in the District of Columbia. So before I considered getting in the race, I looked at the different candidates that were running and felt that they all had, great experience, a diverse experience, but there were a couple of things that I feel like the DC Council is missing as a whole. And I realize, especially as someone who has advocated for and secured legislation for paid family medical leave, $15 hour minimum wage, and also had to engage in annual budget fights to ensure that we were prioritizing the needs of working families. The thing that I realize is missing is somebody who has lived experience. And so, that's really the reason why I decided to run is because I'm a single mother, single working class mother. And I've experienced the challenges that most families, single working class families in DC face. And I really wanted a candidate that understood that from a different perspective. Our children lost a classmate over on Friday. And it's really hard. This is a friend of my daughter's. And, she said, Mom, I'll be graduating. And there have been two students that will not become with us in my class. So, we're all concerned about crime, but then also as, lifelong DC resident, I've always fought and led issues to ensure that DC is more affordable and equitable. We're all the candidates from the mayoral's race, and everyone's talking about affordability. And I think, one elected official used to always tell me the devil's in the details about how do we get there. So I, definitely share the values of affordability, affordable housing, and addressing the violence and crime amongst our youth. But the one that has inspired me the most to run is a piece of legislation that I helped get passed almost 18 years ago, which is the community schools legislation. Community schools legislation was at that time being brought and supported by Community Schools Foundation and Arnie Duncan. We led campaigns to get legislation passed in DC and Maryland. DC passed the legislation, but never really invested in it and funded and invested in developing a model. So at the same time, for the past 3 years, I've been working with the Governor Moore's administration as a political appointment, his senior director of labor relations. And one thing that I've been proud of is that Baltimore passed community schools legislation or years ago, and they invested in it. And it's one of the key reasons why crime has gone down in Baltimore. They have the largest saturation of community schools. So for me, addressing a community schools, ensuring that community schools are a model is developed that speaks to DC, but then we're also investing in it. It will allow us to look strategically at our resources and how we actually put all of the resources in our school community. So the idea of it is that you look at a community, you see what the assets are, you see where the deficit is, and you're strategically putting resource in that community to be funded. But then you're also creating a board structure to help to secure philanthropy money. I know a lot of people don't know about community schools, so I'm going to spend a lot of time educating people on it. Budgeting is one of the hardest. I've been I've been a part of budget fights in DC for years. And then now being on administration side, especially in Maryland, where we faced a tight budget and deficit and had to make some really hard decisions. So one thing I always tell people is I'm not a politician. I'm also a single mother, so I know to balance a budget every month and take care, make the ends meet, but also, in line with our values and the things that are important to us. So we're going to have to make some tough decisions. My first approach is always look at waste. So we need to first prioritize where the waste is occurring, and where are the tax cuts that we've given to large corporations that have not been accountable or actually done anything for the district? I'll tell you, I led a Respect DC campaign against Walmart many years ago, and we had a community benefits agreement that was not legally binding. We were concerned about Walmart leaving vacant buildings, and now we see what they've done on New Jersey Avenue, right? So, we need to look at also tax loopholes at large corporations, not small corporations, because we do have, we're dealing with how do we attract business or support businesses. My focus would be on small businesses. I really think that we need to invest in small businesses to stay in the District of Columbia, to hire locally, and we should be investing our resources in that. It's the investment overall. I would definitely say in education, because we have to address. I think it's a way to address crime, but then also look at our housing affordability, the Housing Production Trust Fund, and how we're actually funding that. But we have some difficult times ahead of us because we got to entice developers to build here. We got to entice businesses to come, and we're also dealing with the vacant downtown DC now that the federal workforce has been, depleted thanks to the Trump administration. So we're going to have some hard conversations that we have to have. The one thing I can assure people is that it's going to be with the community, and it's not going to be with the community coming to the Wilson Building to testify. I am always going to seek out the voices that are not in the room to understand how we make these decisions together.